what is Nathan Fielder's show, The Rehearsal, about? On the face of it, in The Rehearsal, Nathan creates elaborate rehearsals for other people who need to do something challenging, like being a mother or revealing a long, hidden lie to a friend. The second season is about creating rehearsals for pilots. You see, Nathan has studied the history of commercial plane crashes and noticed a pattern that many of them occurred because the second officer did not speak up and voice his concern or was timid about it to the captain. The rehearsals Nathan designs are to increase the ability, the emotional and psychological ability for the second officer to speak up and the captain to receive it. And Fielder is a comic, and the comedy is in the caricaturesque size of the rehearsals, along with Nathan's characteristic deadpan affect, particularly heightened in contrast to the size and the pantomime of the rehearsals he stages. That's what the rehearsal is about. But what is the rehearsal really about? Well, how do I know that there's something else that it's about anyway, like something deeper and symbolic? Well, the main way you know there is some deeper meaning is when something doesn't fit, when something on the surface doesn't fit on the surface, when that thing doesn't seem to fit with what the most obvious thing the story is about. And that thing that doesn't fit is the main character, Nathan. You see, on the surface, this story is about Nathan creating rehearsals for other people. But time and time again, it is Nathan who rehearses. Indeed, the last 2 episodes are entirely about Nathan, and we learn in the last episode that Nathan has been taking pilot lessons for years. So the centrality of Nathan himself has always been the plan, written from the beginning. And Nathan's personal involvement in the show raises the first deeper meaning of the show. Is a rehearsal different from reality? The show blurs this lines, but also does something more than that. You see, in the first season, one of the child actors had trouble distinguishing between Nathan as his pretend father and a real father. Or in the second season, Nathan seems perplexed that the actor's significant others who kiss on camera are not bothered. Or climactically, Nathan rehearses as a pilot, but literally becomes a licensed commercial pilot. In each of these instances, the line between the rehearsal and the reality becomes unclear. And Nathan has always been interested in this relationship, the blurring of categories, seriousness and silliness, reality and rehearsals. For instance, we often think that something can be serious and real or funny and fake. This is embodied when someone is offended by a joke and says, "It was just a joke," meaning you shouldn't treat it as reality because jokes don't exist in the realm of reality. But Nathan has always believed that things can be both funny and real. For instance, in Nathan For You, his previous show, the premise of the show was to increase the business of small businesses using ridiculous and comical strategies. And while on the face of it, it might seem that this is pure comedy, not reality, because they're dumb ideas, by being on the show, their business is increased. Way more people know about them. One of his ideas, Dumb Starbucks, even made it onto late night news. That is, reality. They got millions of dollars worth of TV ads from a joke. And the same was true with a mock production of The Voice in The Rehearsal called Wings of Voice. One of the contestants, Lena Love, complained to Variety magazine that I signed up to be a singer but not a lab rat. But even this is assuming that there's a strict division between rehearsal and reality, appearance and reality. And Nathan doesn't believe that, and he proves it to be false. Because she was on a competition that aired on television that had a winner. And the whole point of the original Voice is to get attention. And that's precisely what being on this rehearsal/real competition did. The only reason we're talking about Lena Love now is because she was on the show. And the same is true of The Rehearsal. Near the end of the season, Nathan tries to present his solution before Congress, and they won't see him. But even though no legal change was effected to improve the aviation problem, because Nathan made the show, more people know about the problem than ever would because he made a show about it. Of course, he can't change aviation safety by directly changing aviation safety. He's a comedian, but comedians can get people's attention, and that's what he did. But notice one crucial aspect. Unless it was entertainment, unless it was comedy, no one would watch it. No one would watch it if it were a documentary about pilot communication. People watched it because Fielder is a comedian. So it was precisely because it was both silly and serious he was able to be effective. This was the same strategy of Jonathan in the Bible with King David when David slept with Bathsheba, a married woman, and then killed her husband. When Jonathan comes to him, he doesn't tell David what he did was wrong. David already knew that. The direct truth would be unable to access his soul. So Jonathan tells him a story about something and someone else. And it is only after David is emotionally involved in that story that Jonathan can access his soul. This is a permutation of Shakespeare's frequent use of a play within a play, where the characters witness similar characters and actions in the play. The key insight is that you don't have full access to reality or yourself. You need a back door, a window, or a rehearsal. Emily Dickinson said, "Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies, a roundabout way to truth." But Fielder's point is not simply a postmodern exploration of the theme or an exercise to see if you can blur the lines between rehearsal and reality. But to uncover his deeper point, we first have to explore the other deeper meaning, the symbolism of autism and anxiety. In the second to last episode of the second season, Nathan shares that after the first season, many people wrote about how the show connected with their experience as being autistic. Throughout the episode, it becomes clear that Nathan might be autistic himself, although he's reluctant to admit this. He goes to a clinic and he's walked through some tests that people seeing if they are autistic undergo, like being presented with different sets of eyes and trying to identify what emotions the eyes are communicating. But the introduction of the theme of autism is not another theme, but a permutation of the basic idea of the rehearsal. You see, an autistic person lives with a constant difficulty, and specifically a social difficulty. A difficulty reading social and emotional cues. Notice, a social difficulty is the fundamental theme of the show, the pilot's social difficulty in communication. More than that, the therapy that those with autism undergo is the rehearsal of social scenarios to increase social understanding and ability. So the question of Nathan's autism is a microcosm of the whole season. In the final episode, Nathan discloses that he's been training to be a pilot for the last 2 years as a way to understand the pilot's dilemma. And as the climactic action, he's going to fly a 747. But in the process of getting his license, he learns that if he has any of the listed medical conditions, he's not allowed to fly. And this includes anxiety that he has had in the past. So he goes to a doctor for evaluation, and the doctor tells him that he is able to do an MRI that can indicate both if he has anxiety and autism. So he undergoes the MRI, but finds out that he won't get the results until after his flight. So he pilots the flight, lands successfully, and everyone is safe. But what's the point? The point is about the relationship between two things. Was Nathan's flight a rehearsal or a reality? I mean, it wasn't a commercial flight, but it was a real flight. Was Nathan autistic and anxious or a pilot? The point is that it doesn't matter if it's a rehearsal because it's also reality. It doesn't matter if it's silly, it can also be serious. It doesn't matter if he's autistic or anxious, he can also be a pilot. And maybe it's not just that it's both and, but maybe one is sometimes the cause of the other. Maybe the rehearsal is serious because it's silly. It's only taken seriously because it is also silly. Maybe you can be on a pretend singing competition and still get famous. Maybe Nathan can be a pilot because he's autistic, or because he worries too much, because his quasi-autistic obsession with rehearsals, with repetition, or what we call practice, is what causes him to be a successful pilot. Maybe his worry is what led him to make this show because he was worried about pilots. Maybe if the pilots were more autistic, if they cared less about social and emotional cues, they would be able to communicate better, not worry about what other people would think, unable to read approval or disapproval. Maybe the concealing of emotions is what led pilots to not communicate or communicate poorly. One of the closing shots is a zoom into Nathan's eyes. It's a callback to when he was in the office taking the autism test, trying to read the emotions from the eyes, and he struggled. The viewer is now put into the place of the person who is being tested for autism, you and me. Are we able to pass the test? Are we able to read Nathan's emotions? One of the features of autistic people is that they both struggle with reading other people, but also struggle to emote themselves. So when we see Nathan's eyes, it is genuinely hard to tell what he's feeling. In one of the final scenes, Nathan gets a call from his doctor to tell him the results, to tell him if he's autistic and anxious. But Nathan ignores it. Because sometimes dividing between serious and silly, rehearsal and reality, autistic or not, creates more confusion than clarity. And sometimes it's both. One of the characteristic features of the cycle of rehearsals is that rehearsals frequently go off script, produce unexpected emotional fallout, or create entirely new problems that then require further, even more elaborate rehearsals. And this, of course, is part of the design of the show. And the deeper insight is that we don't always know what we're rehearsing for. The characters in the show are rehearsing for the thing that they're intending to enact, the reality. But the rehearsal is the show, so it's also reality. Their rehearsing is the reality of the show. And the whole idea of a rehearsal is that if you do not rehearse, the reality cannot exist. Pilots will not communicate, and the safety cannot be ensured, so the rehearsal is required for the reality. And the show itself is a rehearsal, and perhaps in two ways. First, it's a rehearsal of an attempt to solve this problem, and whether this rehearsal will affect the thing in reality, the new pilot safety protocols, we don't know. We shall see. But second, all of this raises the question, is the rehearsal show itself a rehearsal for the show Nathan actually wants to make? And while that may seem like a dumb postmodern question, there's actually something deep going on here. Because we never know what we're rehearsing for. The nature of the creative craft is that every action is both real and a rehearsal, or using more conventional language, a preparation, a sanctification, a stop, a scene in the journey. Abraham was 75 years old when God called him to pick up his family and move. 75 years old and his journey had just begun. It was a preparation for the latter years. David spent years shepherding sheep and fighting bears before he led Israel and fought Goliath. Indeed, the structure of rehearsal and reality, preparation, is woven into the very fabric of life, the sabbatical structure of reality. We have these cycles of work and rest. It happens every day. We work in the day and rest at night. And then after 5 or 6 of those cycles, we take off a whole day. Each day is both an end in itself and a preparation for the next day. Indeed, the work you do builds on yesterday's work, but is also valuable in and of itself. So what's the purpose of the show? Is the show a rehearsal for the show Nathan actually wants to make? And once again, there's no difference between the rehearsal for the show that is the show and the show he's rehearsing for. And of course this is true. And this is true of every creator. Your current creation is both a creation in itself and a preparation for your next work. And that, my friends, is what the rehearsal's actually about.